The reality is you need to have a certain level of self-awareness to understand your own mind, your own thoughts. And this is something that people struggle with all the time. I struggle with it. It's something that adults, as well as teenagers and kids that we work with, to develop and install a level of self-awareness to be able to manage our negative worries and our negative emotions is a challenge that you will embark on your whole life. But it's just about not letting those fears control and dictate how you live your life.
100%.
So Adam's saying that he's not the best flyer. Ditto. I can't be doing with it. But it doesn't stop us. And that's the important bit.
Such a good point.
It doesn't stop you doing these things.
Hello, and welcome back to AYP Spike. I'm Adam, AYP coach and primary program co-lead, and I'm joined today by fellow AYP coach and primary program co-lead, but he's a lot more lad than me, Andy Feast. Hello, Andy. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. I think that's the second week in a row. Geezer now lad, I'm waiting to see what you say next week. So
yeah, I've kind of boxed myself into a corner with these intros where I need to try and make you more like lad geezer every week, and I'm going to run out of words.
We had a work meeting yesterday, and Andrew said. He said the exact same thing to all coaches, and I just thought, you're putting me in a box over here.
I mean,
I was flummoxed.
Dear listener, is the box wrong? This would be my question. I think the box is pretty good. That's a good box. It's a detailed box. And in fact, I just want to let everyone in behind the curtain slightly. Before we started recording this episode, Andy was like, I'm going to try and be funnier this week.
Don't listen
so
to me.
I would
He's
like
lying.
you, dear
He's
listener,
lying.
I'm not lying. I never lie. To keep a running tally of how many times Andy made you laugh. Like kind of like, what's it called when you like chicken, it's like 4 lines and a strike tallying. Tally the laughs, then send us a photo of that on Instagram or email me, adamwright@aypuk.com. It's in the show notes. Just let us know how many times Andy made you laugh today. I'm going to keep track, and then in a month's time, we'll do a performance review. And if he's not made you laugh 6 times in the month, we're replacing him with another Andy. We'll find one who's even more
fair
geezer.
enough deal.
Yeah,
I regret that one already.
Does that count as a joke? Tell me.
Laugh.
I'm just gonna insert laugh tracks when there's a really.
Oh, please.
Just so
American
you guys
sitcom
get the cue, so that I just made a joke, guys. Let's feel bad for him. So.
Oh, you're too sweet, too kind. That is a mistake.
Yeah.
That is a mistake. But
it's all right. I'm excited to see Comedy Andy coming out.
Yeah,
Rob Beckett, our very own.
Let's crack on then.
So last week we talked about change and how our brain struggles to kind of respond to change, and the basic of fact of it that kind of your brain has models for everything. It has a model for everything you're doing, from smallest things, from making your morning cup of tea to really complicated things like what you're doing at work or what you're doing at school, for example. And then change is your brain having to go, that model's not, the same as it normally is. For example, your commute we used last week is changed because there's roadworks. And then you have to build a new model, and that makes us feel quite stressed. Of what we kind of spoke a bit about, we're going to talk about another aspect, and the thing we kind of touched on last week a little bit, which is kind of anxiety and worries. So to give the basic brain science kind of up front, and this is obviously a very upsetting topic, and if you would like support with this directly, please find out more information on aypuk.com. But anxiety and worrying is done by a part of your brain, we call it the worry system, okay? Which is kind of your amygdala, which is the Mr. Worry. Its job is to think of worrying situations to prepare you for them. Now, you might wonder why, and also, if you are wondering, you haven't listened to last week's episode, which means you need to get on that. But why, Andy? I want to ask you this question. Why does my brain worry? Why, if I'm, thinking evolutionarily as an animal to survive, why is it really important that our brain worries? And, it's a kind of a universal fact that we are going to worry. Why is that?
It's such a simple answer. Back when we were roaming around in tribes and cavemen and all that sort of business, our brains are wired for fight or flight responses. And I'm sure Adam will go on to the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system in a bit, but fundamentally and basically in layman's terms, fight or flight occurs in our brains to keep us alive, to keep us safe from threats and external environment dangers. So we have got now a 21st century brain in essentially what is a caveman's head. We do not operate in the same space as we did thousands and thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
The threats and challenges we face on a day-to-day basis,
We're not going to solve them in the same way. Yeah.
They're not going to solve them in the same way, but our brains haven't learned that. They are still wired the same way.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Our anxieties and our fears and our threats and the challenges we face on a day-to-day basis are astronomically different to what they were.
No, 100%.
Like today, even the podcast, we started my second week doing it. That sort of anxiety, cavemen aren't podcasting. That's just not happening.
Are they not?
Not that I'm aware of. So do you know what I mean? So that's the reality of it. Our brains are dealing with these worries in the same way, and we'll speak about this a bit more, but our brains predict negatively. So our brains will always predict a negative outcome of something we are worried about. We don't worry about winning the lottery. We don't worry about all these positive things.
That's a good thing. Exactly.
So that's fundamentally why our brains are the way they are, because evolutionarily, is that a word? I'm going to go with it. Evolutionarily,
stick with it.
It's our brains are just wired to keep us safe, and that's just not very helpful in the 21st century.
Exactly. Well, I think that is the fundamental part of it. Our brains are worrying about things to kind of prepare our brains for these scenarios. Now, we need to be really crucial here. Worrying is such a kind of base human instinct, right? Anyone who's telling you can be completely worry-free is, I'm afraid, as a snake oil salesman, they are lying to you. There's no way you can be worry-free, because worrying is part of your internal reflexes. Okay, it's a way of protecting you, as Andy said. But as Andy said as well, the problem is that the problems we face today are not solved in the same way as those worrying things. So they're kind of two big buckets of worries. Okay, the two big buckets of worries I'm going to go for are the kind of realistic worries that you can act on, and that's the kind of preparing you for stuff. For example, if you are someone in school, you're worrying about your tests and assessments and stuff like that. That is a worry. You're probably worried about that. The way that worry will manifest in you is different. And as we always say, your body and your brain build your mind every day. So these things aren't kind of, these worries, that kind of stuff is not just something you experience in your head. It's not like a headache. It's probably a full body experience. When I get stressed, I get quite sweaty. I get quite clammy. It's a full body experience. I'm not just in my head worrying. My body is worrying because it's a full body experience. But those worries are important because your brain is going, oh, this, if I don't do my revision for this test, I'm going to fail this test, and then kind of spiraling down a worry chain, as it were. But then there's something you quite easily can do about that worry, which is go, okay, I'm going to build a study plan, Freya flashcard, mind map to sort out that worry, and then that'll alleviate that worry. And that's, that is a benefit of worrying. And that's why when we cross the road, we check left and right. Our brain's going, oh, could be cars here. Let's check left and right. That's a worry that keeps you safe. And that's a really, that's a positive thing. That's not a bad thing. Worries are not always bad. Worries are trying to keep you safe. And sometimes they're quite useful in that, kind of keep you safe. And you have instincts and stuff like that. And that is your brain going, let's be careful about this thing. Let's just be careful about those things. There are other more unhelpful worries. And this is kind of leading to a conversation we'll eventually get to, kind of anxiety. Worries about really potentially difficult, extremely, extremely, extremely unlikely things that we also have very little control over. For example, and I might bring it into an example that I feel quite personally, I used to be a very nervous flyer. I still don't love flying. I'm not like, I like flying because I like going cool places, and I don't actually mind the plane bit. Kind of in hindsight, it's quite fun. I like looking out the window on a nice, clear, sunny day. But the actual experience of the airport, the security, the being on the plane, I'm quite a tall guy, got a small seat normally. Yeah.
I've got to wear these to go 5'9". Christ.
I'm going to tally one joke there for Andy.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I find the plane experience quite stressful. And a chief worry that will pop up, as I'm sure it does for lots of listeners, is, the plane's going to crash and I'm going to die. And I think that is something very real that we all experience. But, and you can throw stats at it. You can be like, you're in more danger anywhere else on the planet than you are on a plane. And you're, probably pretty safe wherever you are. It's like, but that doesn't feel the case when you're on a plane and stuff like that. So it's just understanding that those worries, those really quite powerful worries like on a plane, are extremely, extremely unlikely. but they're still real. You'll still maybe have a really difficult experience getting onto planes. I remember when I was like 16, 17, flying to Iceland on a family holiday. It was like an hour and a half flight for like 10 hours. I was absolutely petrified the entire time. From takeoff to landing, I was like, this is awful. Horrible experience. And so yeah, today we're going to talk about why that kind of happens and the ways to, as I said, you can't get rid of it, unfortunately, but you can manage your way out of it. You don't have to just accept that you're going to respond to a certain thing in a certain way. And whilst it's important to listen to our worry system because it is trying to protect us, it's also important to know there's a difference between a kind of a worry that we need to pay attention to and a worry that actually there's nothing either we can do about it and that's probably extremely irrational, and trying to talk back to that part of our brain and system.
It's such an important distinction you've made. Things we can control and things we can't control. And if we can't control it, that's when we bring in other people. That's why we have open, honest conversations about our fears and anxieties so that they can actually give us a bit of perspective and say, do you know what, let's be reasonable, let's be a bit realistic. You're not going to crash. The statistics suggest you're not going to crash. So it's those sorts of conversations that you need to have sometimes if you can't control your own worries. The reality is you need to have a certain level of self-awareness to understand your own mind, your own thoughts. And this is something that people struggle with all the time. I struggle with it. It's something that adults, as well as teenagers and kids that we work with, to develop and install a level of self-awareness to be able to manage our negative worries and our negative emotions is a challenge that you will embark on your whole life. But it's just about not letting those fears control and dictate how you live your life.
100%.
So Adam's saying that he's not the best flyer. Ditto. I can't be doing with it. But it doesn't stop us. And that's the important bit.
Such a good point.
It doesn't stop you doing these things. And then you can look back and go, we've created that model of flying 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. That it's been fine all those times. So your brain has that model.
Exactly.
So that's how you can sort of calm down that worry system by using that positive self-talk, that realism of saying, we've done this before, we've been fine. There is nothing to suggest it won't be fine this time. And that's how the power of models comes in with this sort of idea about the worry system.
No, 100%. I think the flight one is a really good, obviously and one of the difficult things about brains is people's individual experiences are of worries of themselves or whatever is all different. Like me and Andy go on the exact same flight, going to the exact same place. We're going to have different experiences of that flight because we're different people. We've had different experiences leading up to that flight. We'll have different experiences after it. So, what we're saying is not prescriptive because the way that you might experience a worry, you might be the chillest flyer ever. You literally might be one of those people who, doesn't even bother. You get to the airport at 10 minutes before the plane. You're on the plane. You're maybe. That's my brother. Fair play to him. Yeah,
it's just calmest guy.
See,
just so
could
zen,
not be me. I'm there. My flight's at 12. I'm there at 6 a.m. I'm there. I'm getting the prep. Yeah. The thing is, I'm getting the coffee, and then I'm getting quite work. I'm getting caffeinated. I'm getting extra more excited. Anyway, but
everyone is going to experience anxieties and fears and worries almost all the time. That's just how our brains operate and work. It's how we deal, how we manage it, and how we can sort of control those that will sort of dictate success in a way. Yeah. And tell yourself, people, please, it's so important to be kind to yourself, to make sure that you look after yourself, to make sure that you're open and honest with yourself first and foremost, to not let these worries sort of just push you down and beat you up. So you have to make sure that you try your best to get on top of them. And just tell yourself it's okay to sometimes be upset, to be angry, all these negative emotions that we'll speak about in the next few weeks. Yeah. Just be kind to yourself and stop putting so much pressure on yourself to be this or be that.
Yeah.
Just let yourself deal and problem solve and let your mind wander and network, which I'm sure you'll talk about. Let that explore how you feel. Start journaling your emotions and your feelings. Yeah. As someone who's experienced quite a lot of anxiety in my lifetime, it's such an ever-evolving science and how we deal with it and how we change it. But I think for me, the most important thing has been, one, acceptance. Well, yeah, I do feel this anxiety. Yes, I have experienced panic attacks, and I'm sure we'll go into that a little bit in a bit.
Yeah.
So all these open conversations that I feel like I can have with you and my colleagues and my family, if you have that social support network, use it. Definitely use it. And if that's a weaker aspect within your life, then you have the onus on yourself to get the tools to manage those things, because you don't want them controlling and dictating your life.
Yeah.
Adam gets on the flight. He's fine on the flight. He was anxious about the flight. He was fine. These are the sorts of things you need to be thinking, and you know, just let yourself be happy. Let yourself be all these things. And it's so easy to operate in spaces where we are down, we are feeling low. To get out of that and to sort of tell yourself it's okay to be happy is something that I found powerful.
Yeah.
And it's something that I still try and contend with today. And I think anxiety is such a big part of everyone's life. You either let it control you or you control it. And that's an important thing to say, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's important. This is a good moment to distinguish between a worry and the worry system, and someone who worries, and someone who has anxiety, and someone who, and what anxiety is. So they're similar. So a worry, as like we said, is a negative prediction about something that could happen. Those can be very minor negative predictions, like the ones that remind you to look left and right when you're crossing the road. They can be atrocious ones that are really, really scary. You know, just the worst thing you've thought could happen is a worry, you know? What anxiety, and that all happens in, you can't see because I'm pointing at my forehead, but just behind your bridge of your nose and where your kind of eyes and eyebrows are is your worry system. And anxiety is when, so running back to this idea of neuroplasticity, which we talked about a little bit last week, which is the idea that your brain changes throughout your life and it just gets better at doing what you do with it, and whatever that is. It doesn't discriminate between good things and bad things. If you spend loads of time doing your well-being rocks, your brain's going to get quite good at, its kind of executive function circuit. It's going to build up quite strong. If you worry a lot instead, you're going to get much, much stronger worry circuits. And basically, anxiety is when you almost get trapped into that specific part of your brain. And to talk about anxiety, to talk about worries, and to talk about how to manage it, we also need to talk about a different part of our brain, which is our prefrontal cortex, which is just kind of a little bit above it in your head. It's one of the most famous parts of the brain, so you might well know where it is, but if you just Google prefrontal cortex, it will show you a picture of where it is. But basically, that's the part of our brain that talks back to the worry system, that, the worry system flags something that we should think about, that we should predict negatively, and flags it up. And that prefrontal cortex kind of takes that in and goes, either talks back to it, puts it down like that. That's nothing to worry about here, or it acts on the worry. That's kind of what the point of the worry system is. Anxiety is when our worry system's kind of circuitry gets so dense and so strong that we can't kind of break out of it. There's no talk back from our prefrontal cortex that's strong enough to contend with it. It's like going to the gym and working out your arms loads, and then not your legs. Your legs are going to struggle, therefore, to keep up, with the strength that you're putting on your arms. That's the weird analogy because your brain's not a muscle, but it's the same kind of thing. What you do most with your brain is what your brain gets better at. And if you worry a lot and don't manage those things and don't talk to people about those things, all the things we're going to talk about in a minute, and how to kind of manage these worries and anxieties, you're going to get really, really good at worrying, and your brain's going to get very efficient at worrying and do it constantly, and which can lead you to being trapped in that part of your brain, which is a really scary space. And something else we should say here is it doesn't feel like that. That's not, when I'm on a plane and I'm scared of the plane not landing as it should, let's say, it doesn't feel like, oh man, that plane could not land like that. I'm terrified. It's a full body experience, because you're engaged into, as we said last week, your sympathetic nervous system, which is the nervous system that activates when there's a saber-toothed tiger coming at you, or a tiger or a lion or something threatening and enormously scary in front of you. It activates that system. The problem is, on a plane, there's very little that being in fight, flight, freeze is going to do for you, apart from stress you out even further. You can't, I think, using the example of a plane, because I think it's, lots of people I've spoken to are worried about planes. It's quite a universal thing, but obviously if you're not scared about planes, try and apply this to something you maybe are more worried about as well. There's not much you can do on a plane to alleviate that concern. If you're having a really difficult worry, but you're in your house, you can, do some of the management things we're going to talk about in a minute a little bit easier on a plane. You can't really exercise on a plane. Often you're crammed into these tiny little seats next to the window, for example. So, and time goes really slowly, and there's nothing you can do. You're not in control in absolutely any capacity. And you might be hungry, all this stuff. So it doesn't help our kind of prefrontal cortex and executive function circuits at the top of our head to talk back to that system at all. So that's the kind of broad neuroscience difference between anxiety and a worry. Because everyone who worries and is anxious about something does not have anxiety. And it's important that we distinguish
Very
between
key
those two things.
distinction,
And everyone's anxiety, everyone who has anxiety is completely different. There's no two people with the same brain, therefore no two people with anxiety. Even if that anxiety stems from a similar cause, is the same. So this is kind of one of the difficulties, one of the benefits of the next we're going to talk about is the kind of management system for this stuff. It's all very unique. Some of it will work for you, some of it won't. But this is all based in the brain science and how the brain works. So some of it will work for you if you try hard enough at doing it. And it's just that idea to kind of end out this section on is that the reason you may be more worried about stuff than you need to be, and is because you don't necessarily manage those worries in a really effective way. That doesn't have to be the case for the rest of your life. You can make changes today and every single day to make that, make worrying a less stressful experience for you, a less constant experience for you, and something you feel like you have a bit more control over. And we're going to talk about that little section next.
Two things I want to touch on from what you said, and it's so poignant to mention that there is a clear difference between anxiety and worry. Like Adam said, everyone worries, doesn't mean you have clinical anxiety or even, showing signs of you might do. Okay, so that's important to say. And I'm sure we'll speak a little bit about anxiety itself and why that's such a challenge to deal with. But the 2 points I want to say is what I find the most difficult aspect of all these negative emotions and feelings is when you're in it, and Adam touched on it, that fog you feel, that your brain sort of has this fog and you can't think clearly, you can't see bigger pictures.
Yeah.
You are so trapped by your negative thoughts and emotions that to get out of it is so tricky because half the time you're not even sure you're operating in that space.
And it feels like you're not, it feels like you're not there, doesn't it? It doesn't,
spot on.
Yeah, this is the problem with the language around this stuff. And, this is the reality. Your brain, these are predictions, but it doesn't feel like a prediction.
No, it feels like because our brains are so powerful, 86 billion neurons, it feels like we can trap ourselves in a reality that we've created for ourselves.
Exactly.
And that's such a dangerous thing to be able to do, first and foremost.
But also not realise that we're doing it.
It's like Inception. It's so confusing and convoluted, but the fundamentals of it. Oh, yeah. I'll try and that's the hair. That's the reality is when we're in these negative places, it's very well and good when you feel clarity of mind, when you're in better places, when you're feeling happy, you've got a spring in your step. Yeah. In those moments, to reflect on a negative time, it's easy. We 100%. Can all do that. It's how do we...
I'm not currently on a plane. I'm fine.
Exactly. We can't do this podcast on a plane. It'd be crumbled to pieces. So that's why the important bit is, can we manage when we're in those bad times? How do we manage? How do we not sit in those places for too long?
And just to talk about some coping mechanisms, a theme of this show, you will notice if you listen regularly, is we're going to defer to the 12 Rocks of Wellbeing as a way of coping with lots of these things. Because again, everyone's brains are different and everyone's experiences of worry, anxiety, things that scare them are different every single time. So it's quite hard to be prescriptive in this is exactly what you do in this situation because I have no idea what works for you. But to use the plane example, bring it back around to the plane example, because you're in your parasympathetic nervous system, you're in your fight, flight, freeze response, the way to try and manage that kind of strong feeling of worry, uncertainty, anxiety on a plane, that stress, is to get into your parasympathetic nervous system. It's harder on a plane. If you're traveling solo, one of the best things you can do is breathing exercises. And now it doesn't sound like it's going to be very effective, but breathing exercises slow your heart rate down. It brings you into your body more, which brings into your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest nervous system. It just calms you down. So your job in that situation is to get out of your sympathetic nervous system into your parasympathetic nervous system. Distract yourself. I find watching good TV shows are good, like kind of maybe sitcoms, irreverent stuff like that. That's a bit quite quick, quite fast. That you're not you don't have much time to think around, so you just kind of focus on that. I also find like games on your phone just really engaging, especially ones where you have to act constantly, like Temple Run, Subway Surfers are really, really helpful ways of managing that kind of anxiety on planes. But, if you're traveling with people, one of the most important ways, and I think Andy said this earlier, is to talk to other people. Because maybe if we can't engage our prefrontal cortex in a moment, everyone else can, you know? If I'm stressed about something, and this is what you do with your friends and family and loved ones all the time, is you talk to them about your worry. You talk to them about this thing. I'm worried about this thing. Then they can help you calm down. They can help you see it from a different perspective. They can give you reasons not to worry about it. They can help you solve it if it's a problem that needs to be, you know, if it's a worry that needs an action to take to solve it. And that's one of the most important parts of this kind of thing, is that we need to not think it's something we are on our own to solve. One of the most important parts is lots of the things with our brains is, no matter how much you know about how tricky and how our brain works, even if you are an expert in knowing that the worry system works like this, like we all are at this company, it doesn't mean it doesn't affect us. I know all this stuff, but I'm still scared to go on a plane. I know that I'm going to think, oh, on a plane, but I'm still scared on a plane. So in those moments, kind of get out of yourself, talk to someone that's prefrontal cortex. Definitely. Try and sit in that area above your feelings and your current experience and realize what's happening and kind of be metacognitive about it, is what we call it. Definitely. And just look into it in that other way. But the 12 rocks of well-being, the whole point of all of these behaviors every single day is to allow yourself to give you the most mental flexibility and structure you possibly going to have. If you're getting on a plane and you've had 12 hours sleep, you've done a bit of exercise, you've read a book, you've listened to some music, you're probably going to handle that stress, if you're a stressful flyer, a little bit better than someone who didn't get much sleep last night. And that's just a simple well-being behavior. And that applies to every single aspect of our lives. Talking about the change thing last week, if we experience a traffic jam on the way to work and our model has to change and we start to stress about, that kind of stress about making it to work and what that means if our boss is going to fire us, yada, yada, yada. If we've taken care of ourselves the day before, got enough sleep, all that stuff, we're going to handle that situation better because we've got more mental bandwidth, more flexibility in our mental response to handle that stuff better. So one of the things about worries and change, as we talked about last week, it's quite difficult to talk about because the whole point is you don't know when it's going to happen. You don't know when you're going to worry about something. You don't know what worrying things are going to happen. That's just the world we live in at the moment, especially if there's worrying stuff happening a lot of the time, quite big worries that we can do nothing about. So taking care of ourselves, talking to our friends about these things are some of the most effective ways we can handle those kind of concerns and worries, because it gets us out of our head. Other people's prefrontal cortexes can get involved in soothing ourselves and calming ourselves down.
And just to touch on those parasympathetic, sympathetic nervous system one last time, there is the problem with those systems is that to enter a calm, when we are in our calm state and we feel relaxed, we feel calm, we feel zen, okay, there is this thing called automatic system switch, okay, or accidental system switch.
Andy going on the neuroscience. It's crazy.
This is TED Talk. So, accidental system switch, where we can't control that. We go from one system, our calm, relaxed system, to our stressed out fight or flight system. And that is accidental. We don't control that. That's not something we consciously want to do.
Yep.
Why would we want to go to that system?
Oh, yeah.
We would not. The beautiful thing about it is, from our fight or flight sympathetic nervous system, we can move consciously back into our parasympathetic nervous system.
100%.
Have I got that the right way around?
100%, yeah. Yes, sir. Look at him go, guys.
Come on, happy days. So that is the conscious switch we can make. We can use all these coping strategies and these coping mechanisms to consciously move back into a calm, relaxed state. And I think if you're going to take something away, take that away from this session, because, okay, yes, we can't always prevent entering our worried state, but we sure as hell can move back into our calm state.
100%, exactly. And this is why blabbing on about how it works is important, because if we understand what's happening, again, sometimes you're not going to realize it's happening. That's the point. Yeah. Your body and your brain build your mind. You are not in control of this system, okay? You can take control and you can understand how the system works. It's a massive lorry coming past it. I'm going to do my best. Do they not know we're podcasting in here? So hopefully I've managed to make that not as loud. But if not, they haven't heard this bit anyway, so that's fine. But we're not in a Power Ranger. We're not controlling this big robot. It would be very cool if we were, and we could then combine into some big dinosaur thing.
Mega.
That would be sick. But unfortunately, that's not the world we live in. We are not in control of this thing, but we can take control of this thing if we understand how it works, how the system works. So us understanding that we are going to shift sometimes from our parasympathetic to our sympathetic, in especially, that is a system trying to keep us safe. And because you're worried about the plane, it's going to that system because that's the biological reflex, is that this system keeps us safe because it means we get out of these situations. But you can't get out of a plane very easily, and that apply that to any other worry. We're using plane as a kind of a catch-all in this podcast. But you can, as Andy exactly said, take control of that a little bit. You don't have to be ruled by this neural architecture in your head. If you understand how it works, then you can work to change it. And then that is what we're all about here at AYP. And obviously this is anxiety is a difficult topic. Worrying is a stressful, difficult topic to talk about. So if anyone listening would like some more, direct help, because again, it's everyone's brains are different, everyone's experiences are different, then please get in touch at aypuk.com, and there'll be an email address in the show notes you can use to contact us directly. And it's all about helping people. We're a business, but we're not a business for, to make the shareholders happy. It's a business to try and spread this stuff because it's changed our lives. That's what we're in the game for. It's not because me and Andy saw a lucrative podcasting opportunity, although we did.
Let me tell you.
We're in this for the bank. But no, not that at all. We really want to help people as much as we can. So no matter what kind of budget you're working on, we really want to help out. So just get in contact if you're struggling with something, or if you're not, if you just are interested in some of this stuff, let us know.
Stay on top
We'll
of
talk
it.
about it.
Let's not hit rock bottom before we get help.
Exactly.
Let's stay afloat and
100%.
improve and progress in a way that will benefit our lives. And let's, we want to change everyone's brains and make everyone live happier, more content lives. That's our aim. That's our mission.
That is the goal.
So let's do it.
Yeah, as we wrap up this podcast, a couple kind of what they call end notes, I guess. How did Andy do in terms of jokes? How do we think? I think I got two solid chuckles in there.
I reckon we would have got a sympathy, giggle.
4 or 5.
Like a really small sympathy giggle.
Yeah, you know what?
He's trying.
He's trying.
Let's.
I think it's important. It's you did your best. And that's all we can do. That's all we can ask of you. The thing is, your brain changes. The more Andy practices this, the funnier it's going to get. Theoretically.
So season 15. Might get a good laugh here.
Watch out, mate. Watch out. Yeah. So just let us know what you think Andy, how Andy did today, and if you think he's improving. And also, I should say, we want to hear from you. This is, me and Andy are chatting here, but we come into the conversation. Come and join us. So email me at adamwright@aypuk.com. That is in the show notes. So you can just email me, send me, what you think of the podcast. Send me your thoughts on something. We'll have a whole kind of section where we chat more directly to you. Get in touch and get in contact and follow us on our Instagram pages and stuff. All of this is linked in the description. But yeah, thank you all so much for listening.
Happy days. Thank you. Look after yourselves, everyone, and see you next week.
See you next week. Woo-hoo. Cheers.